Scene 1. Time, 10 a.m. Place, an anteroom next to the nursing station of a medical surgery unit in a large public hospital in New York City. 3 people are seated in the room. Dr. Helen Stokowski, a young, attractive woman in her late 20s. The head nurse, Clarence Lattimore, a man in his mid-40s. And Paul Alexander, the unit medical social worker, tall, handsome, in his mid-30s. They are conducting daily rounds.
The next patient is Frank Montgomery.
He'll be cleared for discharge tomorrow.
He's going to need some clothing.
What happened to his clothing?
His clothing was so filthy that it had to be discarded.
What does he need?
Shoes, slacks, shirt, everything.
Okay. I'll go talk to the patient and see what I can do.
Well, I hope there's no screw-ups like what happened to the other homeless guy who had to stay in the hospital an extra night because he needed a shirt.
If you told me that earlier in the day, instead of waiting until 5 p.m., then maybe I could have gotten him a pair.
Don't blame that on me. That's your job to know who needs clothing, not mine.
Don't tell me my job, okay?
I'm not telling you your job. I'm just letting you know that you have to be on top of these cases.
Enough of this bickering. What's the plan for Mr. Montgomery?
He's homeless. So the plan is placement in the shelter. You need to complete an M11Q so I can make a referral.
Okay, give me the form.
The form needs to be filled out completely as possible. Otherwise, the shelter may bounce it back to us.
Don't worry about that. I'll have the form completed and back to you by lunchtime.
Fine.
Okay, now for our last patient, Esther Shapiro.
Miss Shapiro says she wants to go home.
I cleared her for discharge yesterday, and she was supposed to go home today with home care, so why is she still in the hospital?
The patient is 94 years old and lives alone in the 5th floor of a walk-up. She has no known relatives, and when I spoke with her about home care, she said she didn't want any strangers in her apartment, and then she could take care of herself. I think if she was discharged to home, she would be at risk. Maybe she should be placed in a nursing home for further rehab.
Can't the rehab be provided at home?
Possibly. The problem is whether she can negotiate the 5 flights of stairs.
How come you didn't tell me before that she lived in a walk-up?
I told you, day after she was admitted.
I don't remember that at all. And anyway, I don't see why she needs to go to a nursing home when she's medically cleared for discharge, wants to go home, and can get home care services.
I can understand the patient wanting to go home, but not if she's going to be placed at risk.
From a nursing point of view, she can perform all her daily activities. I mean, she's not bedbound.
I know she's not bedbound, but can she handle 5 flights of stairs? And will she be trapped in her apartment? Those are my concerns.
You know, Mr. Alexander, you make it sound like we don't care what happens to the patients, and frankly, I resent that.
I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just reporting my assessment of the patient's situations and needs.
Who's the doctor?
You are.
Me or you? Thank you. So I would appreciate it if when I order something for the patient, you not fluff it off.
I'm not fluffing off anything.
No? In the meantime, the home care services I requested for the patient are still not in place. Did you even make a referral?
No, I did not.
Your lack of cooperation is outrageous and unprofessional. I'm going to have to discuss this with your supervisor.
Go right ahead.
Is there anything else, Doctor?
Please see to it that Mr. Montgomery gets his clothing. I don't want to have another delay in discharge like what happened with Mr. Frykowski.
Yes, the Frykowski case. We thought that patient would never leave.
That was an unusual situation. Nobody knew that the patient would be locked out of his apartment.
In the meantime, the patient wound up staying on the unit for an extra 4 days while you were spinning your wheels accomplishing nothing.
What do you want me to say? The only person who had an extra set of keys was the landlord, and he was out of town. What could I do?
What could I do? That's the best you could do? Pathetic. This meeting is adjourned.
End of scene 1. Scene 2, 1 hour later. Place, the anteroom. Paul is alone, writing notes in a chart. Sidney Birnbaum, a man in his 50s, enters the room. He is Paul's supervisor. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Sidney. What brings you here?
I need to talk to you.
About what?
You probably already know.
No, I don't know.
Dr. Stankowski called me about a patient, Esther Shapiro, and had some rather uncomplimentary things to say about you, Paul.
That's too bad.
What's the problem with the case?
The doctor wants to discharge the patient to her home with home care services, but I think that the plan will put the patient at risk.
And what does the patient want?
She says she wants to go home.
Well, there you go. What else do you need?
Look, Sydney, just because the patient says she wants to go home doesn't mean that's the best plan for her. What if she says she wants to commit suicide? Now, would that be okay?
Now, don't be facetious, Paul.
I'm not being facetious. You asked me what the problem was, and I told you.
Paul, this is the 4th complaint I've received about you in the past 2 months. That's not good.
Look, I'm doing my job. What else do you want from me?
Maybe to work more cooperatively with the rest of the treatment team?
I do work cooperatively with the rest of the treatment team.
Not according to what I've been told.
What have you been told?
That sometimes you don't follow through with the implementing treatment plans, causing delays in the discharge.
Well, I don't feel obligated to follow through with the plans that I believe will hurt the patients. It just seems like all the hospital wants to do is clear the beds as fast as possible, no matter what, if it hurts the patients.
That's a pretty serious allegation, Paul.
Maybe it is, but I'm just going by what I've seen.
Look, the social work department has a responsibility to work cooperatively with the other members of the treatment team. And when that does not happen, it causes a lot of problems.
Problems for whom?
For the department, for one thing. We're trying to justify our existence and get more staff. And if we're seen as not wanting to work with other members of the team, that could affect our staffing, including your job.
What are you trying to tell me?
That you are to work with the treatment team, not against it.
Where does advocating for patients fit into all that?
Look, Paul, don't play games. I've told you what's expected of you.
Yeah? For me to be a rubber stamp.
Wrong! That's exactly the kind of attitude that's getting you in trouble. Nobody is telling you to be a rubber stamp, but you can share your recommendations in a way that doesn't put off our staff.
Like how? Wear a big smile, cow talk before the doctor? What am I supposed to do?
Well, for one thing, don't come off challenging your doctor's authority.
That's a laugh. I'm no position to challenge anybody's authority, much less the doctor's.
But you do challenge the doctor's authority. I've seen that.
Don't I have the right to express my professional opinion?
You do, and you're expected to do so. But you're also expected to work effectively with the interdisciplinary treatment team.
I know that, and I do that. I can't help it if what I say is not received well by others.
Well, nobody has ever complained to me about your assessments. It is the way that you share them that's your problem.
So now it's a matter of personality.
Look, I'm not going to argue anymore about this. Okay, what's your discharge plan for Mrs. Shapiro?
As far as I'm concerned, it's whatever the doctor recommends.
Okay, but what is your recommendation?
That the patient be placed in a nursing home for further rehab.
Why?
Because she lives on the 5th floor of a walk-up and will be trapped in her apartment because she cannot negotiate 5 flights of stairs.
How do you know that?
By observing her.
Did anyone on the treatment team tell you that the patient can't handle the stairs?
No, but when I mentioned the possibility to the team, they just blew me off. Like what I said meant nothing.
Oh, okay, so you have a hunch based on an impression that the patient may not be able to perform a certain activity, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Did you suggest a rehab consult to assess the patient's level of functioning?
I did, but I was ignored.
Well, mention it again, and if you have any flack, let me know. But under no circumstances are you just to ignore the doctor's recommendations. Is that clear?
Okay, if that's what you want, but let me make one thing clear. I have to do what I think is best for my clients and not be influenced by any politics. I have no interest in that kind of game playing.
Paul, cut the attitude and do your job. You're treading on thin ice, and I may not be able to cover you much longer. I hope you understand that.
Message received loud and clear, Sydney. As usual, you've been very helpful and supportive.
I do my best, Paul.
Yes, I agree. You're doing your very best, and I have to do very best from my end.
End of scene 2. Scene 3. Time, later in the afternoon. Place, the nursing station. There's lots of activity going on as new patients are being admitted and others are waiting discharge. Dr. Stankowski enters a unit accompanied by the attending physician, Dr. Irving Walters. Dr. Walters is a friendly, elderly man who immediately inspires confidence and projects the image of one who is compassionate and understanding. Dr. Stankowski and Dr. Walters are engaged in conversation. Yes, I agree that patients need to be discharged in a timely manner. After all, time is money, and money is time, as the saying goes. And we don't want to waste valuable human resources and time.
I'm glad you agree with me, Dr. Walters.
But, Helen, we also have to take consideration of the needs of the patients.
Hello,
Who's that for?
Paul Montgomery.
Good job, Paul. Looks like you're on top of things.
Thank you, Dr. Walters. But if it weren't for the clothing department, I don't know what we'd do for these patients.
Well said, Paul. I'm glad that you're assigned to the unit.
Thanks, Dr. Walters. I got clothing for Mr. Montgomery. I hope you're happy.
Paul, it's not about me. It's about the patient.
Whatever you say, Clarence.
What's your problem?
Nothing.
Okay, then why don't you can the attitude?
I don't have an attitude.
You certainly do, and I don't like it.
Please, please, no bickering on the unit.
Excuse me, doctor. I'm in charge of this unit, not you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to tread on anybody's toes, but I just couldn't help making a comment.
We're very busy in here. I don't have time for small talk.
Nobody's making small talk.
Okay then, let's talk about Miss Shapiro. When will she be leaving the hospital?
Is there a problem?
The patient was cleared for discharge yesterday, but home care services are still not in place.
What's the holdup?
Yes, Paul. What is the holdup?
It's a bad discharge plan, and in good conscience, I cannot help to implement it.
So you're deliberately sabotaging the plan.
No, I'm not sabotaging anything. I just don't want to do something that I believe may hurt the patient.
Laura, you are one arrogant...
Stop! Let's not get personal, all right? And this is my bailiwick. Now, what exactly is going on here?
The patient lives alone on the 5th floor of a walk-up, and if we send her home, she'll be stuck in her apartment, which will put her at risk.
Were you aware of this?
Yes, I was. But the patient says she wants to go home, so I cleared her for discharge and ordered that she be provided home care services.
Well, what's wrong with that, Paul?
Home care services will not do this patient any good if she's trapped in her apartment.
Paul makes a good point. On the other hand, the patient says she wants to go home, and that can't be ignored either.
I'm not ignoring that. If the patient wants to go home, that's okay with me. But I don't want her to be part of something that it will be quite hurtful to the patient.
So your solution is to withhold services from the patient?
Nobody wants to withhold services. What I want is for the patient to receive the level of services she needs to ensure that she be able to function safely in the community.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Dr. Walters, with all due respect, all of this had been discussed at Brown's.
You know, I'm beginning to suspect that somewhere there's a breakdown in communication.
Then what do you want me to do?
Maybe the patient needs to be seen by rehab to assess her ability to climb the stairs.
I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Look, the patient is able to ambulate without assistance, so why does she need a rehab consultant?
Well, just to make sure that all the bases have been covered, let me know the results.
Thanks a lot. Now you made me look bad in front of my boss.
All we did was talk about a case. I didn't mean to take anyone look bad.
I don't know if you're putting me on or what, but what you're doing is further delaying the patient's discharge, which isn't helping the patient at all.
I'm just doing my job, and if that doesn't suit you, there's really nothing more to say.
All you social workers are the same. Just a bunch of pompous know-it-alls who think you know better than anyone else what's best for the patient, when in fact you're nothing more than glorified paper pushers who go out of their way to give everyone else a hard time under the guise of being clinicians and advocates, which is an outright sham. What are you doing even working in a hospital anyway? A hospital is not a welfare center. You don't provide hands-on care, and everything you do just makes it harder on the rest of us, the people who provide the actual care, and just produces more delays and more wasting of money. Our money, my money, the taxpayers' money, none of which seems to concern you in the least.
I'm sorry you feel that way, but if you doctors would do your paper promptly, then correctly, then maybe some of these delays could be avoided. What I don't understand is how people as educated as medical doctors can't fill out simple, straightforward forms. Every time I ask one of you doctors to complete a form, it's like pulling teeth. Good Lord, sometimes I wonder how you doctors get through medical school. Like when a patient needs transportation, I give doctor a form, and guess what? I wind up having to fill out the form myself because the doctor either can't or won't do it. And then when there's a delay in discharge because the transportation is not yet in place, guess who gets the blame? Me! That's who. And the next thing I know, my supervisors is on my back because of your dereliction. And by the way, I'm a taxpayer too. So don't tell me that I don't care about how the taxpayers' money is being spent, because some of that money that's being spent is mine.
Oh, so now you're blaming the doctors for your incompetence in processing forms. Unlike you social workers, doctors are not paper pushers. We do actual work, which is more than I can say for you. I didn't go to medical school to fill out forms or to make sure that the patient gets a pair of slacks. That's your expertise, not mine. So get off my case and do your job. And if you really cared about how taxpayers' money is being spent, you'd be doing a lot more to help prevent delays in discharge.
You do work? That's news to me. The only work I see you doctors doing is looking at charts, writing orders that nobody can read, and having tons and tons of meetings. So if that's what work is to you, then you have no idea what real work is.
By the way, Miss Montgomery is going to need a car fare to get to the shelter.
Thanks, Clarence. Thanks for letting me know.
I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with Dr. Stankowski. And I just want to let you know I think you're right.
Right? Right about what? I just don't want anybody getting on my case, and that includes you.
Just trying to be supportive, Paul.
Just a few minutes ago, you called me arrogant, and now you're being supportive? Give me a break.
Okay, Paul. Whatever you said.
No. How much fare will Mr. Montgomery need?
End of scene 3. Scene 4, time, next day, 8 a.m. Place, a coffee shop across the street from the hospital. Paul is seated at a table eating breakfast when Dr. Stankowski enters. Paul sees Dr. Stankowski and gestures to her to join him. Dr. Stankowski goes over to Paul and joins him at the table.
Good morning. You come here often?
Not too often. I wanted to get some coffee to take out.
I don't want to keep you.
That's okay. I have some time. My rotation doesn't start until 9. How about you? Do you come here often?
Every day.
How's the food?
I'm still alive, aren't I?
About yesterday, I'm sorry that I blew up at you like that. It was not professional of me.
Nobody's perfect. And besides, I think I said a few things too that maybe I shouldn't have said.
So, do you want to call truce?
I didn't know that we were in war. All we did was exchange some frank and candid comments about issues affecting both of us.
You have a good way with words, I have to hand you that.
You're not so bad yourself in the rhetoric department. By the way, I did some thinking about some of the stuff that you said. And I thought you did make some valid points. Some social workers do sometimes pontificate with something I personally detest. I have no use for these know-it-alls. I have a cousin who drives me nuts every time we get together. Name the topic, and this guy has an opinion. The problem is that he thinks his opinions are fact, when actually this guy has no idea what he's talking about, which makes it rather hard to converse with him. Not that he's not a nice guy, I mean, he is. But still, he can be a real pain in the butt, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I have an aunt who's the same way. When she starts talking, there's no stopping her. Until she runs out of steam, and she usually has a lot of steam to blow off. But luckily, we don't get together too often.
Where are you originally from, if you don't mind me asking?
Poland. I came to the States when I was 5 years old. My father owned a construction business and decided to relocate to the United States, so here I am now.
Is your father still in business?
No, he died 5 years ago from a heart attack.
That's too bad. Where's your mother?
In Greenpoint. She now runs the business and I live with her.
So, are you a first-year resident?
Yes, this is my first year. I did my internship at New York College and then transferred to City Hospital.
What are you planning to specialize in?
So, what would you like to order?
Your breakfast special.
How do you want your eggs?
Sunny side up.
Juice?
Apple juice and also coffee black with sugar.
Okay, are you okay?
I'm okay, thanks.
Okay.
As you were saying,
I lost my train of thought.
I asked you what field you were going to specialize in.
Oh, yes. I want to go into family practice.
That sounds like a good field.
It is.
I have a friend of mine who's a retired OBGYN doctor who I met when I was in the army.
You were in the Army?
Yes, you sound surprised.
I just can't imagine social workers serving in the military.
When I was in the army, I wasn't a social worker. As a matter of fact, my military job had absolutely nothing, even remotely, to do with social work.
So what did you do in the Army?
I was a mechanic. I repaired heavy ordnance like tanks in the military.
That sounds pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, it wasn't. It was a job period.
How long were you in the Army?
8 years, 2 4-year hitches.
And you were stationed overseas?
Yeah, actually. Once for 2 years in Germany, and then once for a year in Iraq. Germany was okay. Iraq, different story.
What happened in Iraq?
Some rather nasty stuff. I don't want to talk about it.
So how did you wind up becoming a social worker?
After 8 years, I had had enough of military and fixing machines. I decided that I wanted to fix people instead. So I left the military, went back home to Oswego, New York, where I'm originally from. Then went to school at the State of University, New York, got a BA degree, and then 2 years later, got my MSW, all paid for by Uncle Sam. Then I started looking for a job, and after sending out about 500 resumes, finally got a job with the city. And here I am now. That's my story in a nutshell.
I thought about joining the military too. I even talked with a recruiter about the military's program for paying for medical school, but to tell you the truth, I just couldn't see myself being sent to Iraq or Afghanistan or some other place we really have no business being in.
I think you made the right decision. I wouldn't recommend anybody joining the military, at least not before giving the matter a lot of careful thought. But as the saying goes, to each his own, right? And besides, I don't like giving advice because once you give advice, you become responsible for the outcome. And sometimes outcomes aren't good. What I do know is that being in the army helped ruin my marriage.
My, you are full of surprises. You were married too?
Yeah, actually for 4 years, like a hitch in the army. But it didn't work out. I was always away, and after a while, she didn't like being a soldier's wife. And in a way, with me not being around, who could blame her? Then again, she knew what she was getting into. When we got married, so, it wasn't like she went into it not knowing.
Where is she now?
Here's your order. Will there be anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Don't you hate being interrupted?
What are you going to do? She's a waitress. I guess sensitivity is not part of her job description.
Still, she could have at least said excuse me before barging in.
That's true too. But there's also another saying, the world is not a perfect place. Anyway, as I was about to say, my ex-wife now lives in Redding, California with my son, Mikey, who's 10 now.
You have a son too? You are full of surprises.
Yeah, and, I mean, in fact, I'm planning to go to California next month to visit him.
It must be tough being separated from your son.
It has its challenges, but we stay in contact by phone and email, so it's not all that bad. What about you? Are you married?
No.
Are you looking?
I haven't found Mr. Right yet.
You must be looking though, right?
To tell you the truth, I've been so busy these past few years, I haven't had much time for socializing.
I don't get it. A pretty lady like you not socializing. I mean, that's too bad. You should have no problem meeting any guy you want.
Well, maybe, but it's a little more complicated than that.
And what happened?
A lot of guys get turned off when I tell them I'm a doctor, and most of the good male doctors are already married.
Why limit yourself to doctors?
I don't. It's just that I'm not around too many people who aren't doctors.
That's too bad, because I think you have a lot to offer. You're attractive, you're employed, and you are intelligent. That's a pretty good combination. Maybe you should expand your social horizons.
Look, I'm really not that desperate to meet a man.
Okay, whatever you say.
I'm really not.
Fine, you don't have to convince me, okay?
Are you angry at me?
No, I'm not. I felt that way yesterday. This is today. Don't worry about it. Everything's cool.
Well, I hope it is, because I want to share something else with you.
What is it?
I was meaning to tell you at rounds, but I might as well tell you now. After our discussion with Dr. Walters, I requested a rehab consult for Ms. Shapiro, and the consultant found that she can only ambulate without assistance for short distances, and would not be able to manage 5 flights of stairs. So I guess you were right after all.
I was just doing my job. I never meant this to be a contest between us. But thanks for sharing this with me. So what's the plan now?
After breakfast, let's meet with the patient before rounds to discuss her options.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
End of scene 4. Scene 5, time 9:30 a.m. Place, a private room in the unit. In the room, the patient Esther Shapiro, a frail, elderly female, is lying in bed, sleeping. Dr. Stadkowski and Paul enter the room.
She's still sleeping. I'll wake her up. Miss Shapiro, wake up. Miss Shapiro, wake up. Wake up, Miss Shapiro.
Oh, hello, doctor. I can't remember your name. Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Shapiro. I'm Dr. Stankowski, and I'm here with Mr. Alexander, the social worker. You remember him, right?
Yes. I told him that I want to go home, but he's done nothing to help me leave. Now I'm stuck in this hospital like a prisoner, all because of him. He won't get me the home care that I need. He's been no help to me at all.
I'm sorry you feel that way, but I can assure you nobody wants to keep you in the hospital against your will, which is why we're here now. We want to talk to you about your discharge plan.
Oh, I'll be going home? Oh, wonderful. When?
Well, remember the therapist from rehab that you saw yesterday?
Yes, I do. She was a very lovely young lady.
Well, in her report, she found it would be hard for you to go up and down the stairs. And I believe you live in a walk-up, don't you?
Oh, don't believe that report. I've been climbing those stairs for over 60 years. All I need is for someone to help me with shopping and cooking. I can still take care of myself.
That's good to hear, and we want you to be as independent as possible. But at this time, discharging you directly back to your apartment might not be the best plan.
What are you talking about? I can't go home? Did he have anything to do with this? From the moment I saw him, I knew he didn't like me.
That's not true, Ms. Shapiro.
Oh, it's true. You hate me. And I don't know why. What did I ever do to you?
She's hysterical. Maybe she needs a psych consult.
I don't think so. She's just upset. Miss Shapiro, please stop crying. Now, try to calm down. Otherwise, it will be hard for us to talk with you. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Good. Now, we're here to help you, and we want you to go home. And that's our long-term goal for you. But We think you need to go to another facility first to help you walk better so you can go up and down the stairs.
Another facility? Ooh, what kind of facility?
A rehab facility.
What rehab facility?
There are several facilities in the city. We can start making referrals today.
I don't want to go to a rehab facility. I want to go home. Please let me go home.
If you go home, you'll be stuck in your apartment. And then what would you do if you have to leave?
I'll get my neighbor to help me. She's my friend.
I know you would, but that may not be enough to ensure your safety, you know.
Oh, you have an answer for everything, don't you?
We're not here to argue with you. We're here to discuss your options, okay? But if you keep fussing, we can't do that, and then nothing gets accomplished.
Okay. I'll listen to what you have to say.
Here are your options. 1, you can go home, but against medical advice. Or 2, we can transfer you to a rehab facility, and from there you go home. The choice is yours.
That's not much of a choice.
But those are your choices, so which is it?
Who's going to look after my apartment while I'm away?
What about your neighbor? If you want, give me her number and I'll call her for you.
Listen, I don't remember her number.
Then what's her name?
Mildred or Naomi, I forget.
Okay, Ms. Shapiro, we really have to decide what to do with you because you no longer need to be in the hospital.
Then send me home.
We already explained why that won't be a good plan.
I don't care. I want to go home.
I know you do, Ms. Shapiro. I'll be getting back to you.
What does that mean?
It means that I have to discuss your case with the attending.
You were so nice to me yesterday, but now you've changed. I don't like you anymore.
We'll be talking later, okay? Bye now. Maybe I should have discharged her to home when I had the chance.
Yes, we could have done that, but it would not have been the right thing to do, you know?
Maybe you're right, but I hope that later I don't have to tell you I told you so.
You wouldn't have to because it won't be necessary.
Okay, in the meantime, I'll request a psych consult to assess Ms. Shapiro's competency to make decisions regarding her discharge plan.
To me, she's just acting out, but I guess a psych consult wouldn't hurt, just to be on the safe side.
Let's see what psych has to say. Okay, Ms. Shapiro, we'll be leaving now. The nurse will be coming with breakfast, okay?
Dr. Stankowski and Paul exit, end of scene 5. Scene 6, time the next day, 10 a.m. Place, nursing station anteroom. Present are Dr. Stankowski, Clarence, and Paul. They are conducting daily rounds.
The next case is Frank Montgomery.
He's medically cleared for discharge.
I'm still waiting for the M11 kid.
I'll get it back to you after lunch. Did he get his clothing and carpet?
I took care of that yesterday.
Excellent. I'm glad to see that you're on top of it, Paul.
Thank you.
The next and final case is Ms. Shapiro.
Yesterday, Paul and I met with the patient to discuss her discharge plan. Transfer to a rehab facility was discussed, but the patient was resistant to the plan and became agitated. A psych consult was requested to assess the patient's competency to make decisions regarding her discharge plan. Psych saw her yesterday, and according to the report, she was very...
Excuse me?
May I help you?
Yes. My name is Clarice Rosenzweig, and I want to talk with the doctor about my grandmother, who is a patient on this unit.
What's the name of the patient?
Esther Shapiro.
Ms. Shapiro has a granddaughter? She told us she had no relatives. Excuse me one moment. Excuse me, Dr. Stankowski. Ms. Shapiro's granddaughter is here to talk about her grandmother.
Ms. Shapiro has a granddaughter? I didn't know that. Paul, did you know about this?
No, I did not.
Okay, let's meet with her. We can talk with her in here.
We were just getting ready to talk about your grandmother. Why don't you join us?
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Helen Stankowski, Ms. Shapiro's doctor.
I'm Paul Alexander, your grandmother's social worker.
And I'm Clarence Lattimore, the head nurse.
Wow, is this a surprise?
Let me get right to the point. I live with my husband and 2 kids in Fort Worth, Texas. Last night I received a phone call from my grandmother. She was hysterical. She told me that people were trying to put her away someplace and to come to New York to save her. Her tone was so alarming that I decided to take the red eye to New York to see for myself what was going on. We didn't even know that she had been hospitalized. Why is she hospitalized anyway?
She was admitted for severe dehydration. She was not retaining enough fluid. We stabilized her medical condition and were preparing to discharge her back to her home when she...
I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home.
Go back to your room.
Clarice, it's you. Oh, thank God you're here.
Yeah, of course I'm here.
This is my darling granddaughter, Clarice. Isn't she beautiful? I love her so much. You won't let them put me away, will you?
Of course not, Yami. We will never let that happen. What's going on here? Why is my grandmother so upset?
Perhaps it would be better if we all sat down first. We can talk in here.
Fine.
Clarice takes Esther by the arm and everyone follows Dr. Stankowski into the anteroom. Everyone takes a seat.
Okay, now what's the situation?
We were planning to discharge Miss Shapiro back to her apartment with home care services when we found out that she lives on the 5th floor of a walk-up and would not be able to negotiate the stairs.
Untrue. I walk up a dozen flights of stairs.
Please, Yami, let the doctor speak.
I will, but don't believe a word she says. And don't believe anything he says either. They're both liars.
Okay, Yami. Please go on.
Since your grandmother would be at risk if we discharged her back to her apartment, we decided to transfer her to a rehab facility to help improve her ability to negotiate the stairs. But your grandmother adamantly disagreed with the plan. So we had her evaluated by psychiatry services to determine whether she was competent to make decisions regarding her discharge plans, and the psychiatry service found that she was not. And so at this point, we were going to proceed with finding a rehab facility for her.
So, because my grandmother disagreed with the discharge plan, she was labeled a mental case?
There's nothing wrong with me upstairs.
That's not it at all. According to the psych consult's report, Ms. Shapiro shows symptoms of early onset dementia and was recommended a thorough neurological workup to rule out Alzheimer's disease. But in any event, there was no way we were going to discharge your